Free men need to be able to protect their families. It's really sad to see people hurt, livelihoods destroyed, even homes destroyed, just to make a political point. Free men take action when churches face heartbreaking attacks. And while cowards stand idle, free men run towards the sound of gunshots when children are in danger. I'm so thankful for free men who stand ready with the tools of liberty.
Man, where's my jam? I will wait for you.
Okay.
No,
we can't afford the licensing.
We can't.
So,
we can't.
Yeah, we didn't.
Maybe we can get permission. I don't know.
It's not how it works.
Hey, y'all! Welcome to CrossPolitic on the Fight, Laugh, Feast Network. It's Pastor Toby Chuck Knox. I'm the Water Boy. It's good to be with you, and this is one of my favorite shows that we've done this week. I'm pretty excited.
I can see that this is going to be all about you.
They're a little excited.
Yeah.
Hey, before we get there, Gravity Jack is a full-service digital agency specializing in the development of virtual and augmented reality experiences, mobile apps, blockchain, and Web3 projects. Founded in 2009 as the first American agency to offer patented augmented reality, and they even patented it.
It's incredible.
Gravity Jack's digital experiences have been a source of innovation for small business, Fortune 500 companies, and the U.S. military. So get your vision in motion today at gravityjack.com.
You see, I'm worried we have to pay for what you just got done singing.
No, don't worry. Yeah, it wasn't close.
Okay. the algorithm, the YouTube algorithm wouldn't catch it.
He was saying the words that match another.
Nobody will know what it is. Okay, good. All right.
Hey, really grateful to have us on CrossPolitic today. Winston Marshall, English musician, podcaster. He's the former banjoist and lead guitarist of the British folk rock band Mumford and Sons.
Man.
That's what Gabe was trying to sing a minute ago, in case you didn't know what
Google it.
He was doing. Prior to this, he was also bluegrass sleaze rap group Captain Kick and the Cowboy Ramblers.
Wow.
There you go.
Wow.
Winston, thanks for joining us on CrossPolitic.
Gabriel, Toby, and Chuck, thank you kindly for having me on this very surreal show.
Surreal.
Wait, I didn't know about this rap group. Why come I didn't know about this rap group? Were you spitting bars?
Well,
well, now that you asked,
I myself wasn't. Although you can find it. There's some deep buried into YouTube. I think our best song was one called, which is a 9-minute rap. Which maybe a good starting point, but I wasn't rapping. I was sort of banjoing and mandolin.
So I won't be listening to that one with the family.
No,
figure that one out.
it's sleaze rap. It was country rap. It was crap.
Yeah.
it was crap. No, it was really
it was labeled that.
Yeah.
So you knew.
You should have known.
The words actually meant something. In today's culture, they usually don't. My bad.
So Winston, I've followed Mumford and Sons for the longest time, and then I saw your story start to pop up when you were, with the band. You retweeted Andy No's book, and said, "Hey, I can't even remember. I don't even think you I don't even know I can't remember if you favorably plugged it. You just retweeted it, and that was it. And then the internet mob came after you." And then I think later you put out an apology, and then you took the apology back and stepped down from the band. I know I'm kind of summarizing a lot and a little. We fill in some details there, and then I got some follow-up questions there.
Sure. This was 19 months ago now, at the pandemic. So March 2021, we're in lockdown, and I took the lockdown actually as an opportunity to recharge and switch off. And I was reading all the books that I'd collected whilst touring around your beautiful, wonderful country and around the world. And this ranged from Tolstoy's War and Peace to Mao's Little Red Book, and also things I was interested in. One of them was Andy No's. Well, I should say actually, at the time, I wouldn't say it was a book that I would have thought was. It wasn't more important to me than any of the other books I'd been reading. But I was tweeting about all the books that I was reading, and Andy No's an American conservative journalist who covers far left extremism, and his book Unmasked documents Antifa in America and the BLM riots of 2020 and the 19 deaths in the first 14 days of those riots and the many businesses that were destroyed in those riots, and the federal courthouse being stormed in
Portland.
siege rather in Portland, and Chaz in Seattle. And for me, anyway, I tweeted it. I had about 3,000 followers on Twitter, right? So nothing. And somehow within 24 hours, it went up all the trending lists in my country, I think in your country as well. And it was a total dog pile, and my life just completely unraveled. And, Twitter's not real life until it's real life. And this is where it's real life is when the phone starts to call, starts to ring, and the people you love are worried, and everything came undone. Actually, it felt quite like a spiritual attack. I went to be with my mum and dad at that time. My mum, who's very sensitive to that, to the spiritual stuff more than I am. For her, it felt like the world was coming after her son, and it was. I remember really feeling it most when I saw her reacting to it all. But my band were very upset, and I wanted to make this stop for them. They, the online activists were coming after them, and I was also open to not knowing everything. Like maybe I didn't know everything about this topic, and maybe I didn't know everything about the author. So, one can't know everything. Thine ignorance of thine ignorance is thy fairest foe. I was happy to be perhaps wrong on this issue. So despite being under considerable duress, but I was also open to being wrong. So I published this apology. And in the coming months, I really dug into the topic. And furthermore, the journalist in question was attacked again by these thugs in Portland, and black-clad. Can't even show they don't even have the courage to show their faces. And there's footage online of him having to run into a hotel. And I thought, I'm a part of the problem by apologizing for I can't be an apologist for this, or in any way claim it doesn't exist, and it really played on my conscience. And there's a few other things going on at the same time. There's an essay published by Alexander Solzhenitsyn upon his exile from Moscow in 1974. If not by lies, and it's 4 or 5 pages long, and there's one paragraph in particular, and it says something like, I'll get this slightly wrong, but and it's a translation of the Russian, of course, but who are you to call yourself an artist or an academic if you are not able to stand by the truth in your word? And so I was in this position where not only was I participating in a lie, but also my integrity was completely ruined. I felt like this apology hung around my neck like a tablet of shame. And at the same time, I knew that in speaking the truth, as I understood it, would bring chaos to the band. And I was in a position where I had really, now, with retrospect, 18 months later, I felt like I didn't really have a choice but to leave the band. So I left, and actually now, difficult as that time was, I've rebuilt my life, and I'm rebuilding my life, and the Lord works in mysterious ways, and so blessings, are coming my way, and I wouldn't say I'm grateful for it, but I'm certainly. I'm past the kind of the hell of it, the chthonic stage, certainly.
Right.
So that's fairly, I guess, a fairly detailed account of what happened.
And yet, I still want to ask a bunch of questions. So, how long were you in the band?
14 years. So I was 19 when I joined the band. I'd been in bands from the age of 14, playing pubs around London, and then we happened to all be playing the same pub circuit, and there was loads of cross-pollination and playing in different groups. And eventually we sort of coalesced around the singer. He had a bunch of songs, and we all had a shared interest in touring. We loved playing shows. In fact, being on stage was like my favorite thing. It was, in terms of artistic expression, I love being on stage. It was a moment of abandon. It's that place where you really reach the transcendental, and it's for me a very I would actually say a sacred place. And I loved performance and the commune with an audience, and so we did that straight away, and it started in pubs and toilets, and it grew and grew over 14 years, and we loved touring in your country, and we toured here extensively, and made 4 records, a bunch of EPs as well. We did an EP in, I think probably my favorite thing we did was EP in South Africa with Baba Ma. We became very, I don't know if you're familiar with Baba Ma. He's kind of like the Senegalese Bruce Springsteen.
Yeah.
He's such a badass as well, because he could have, there's another great Senegalese artist called Moussamdour. I've forgotten his first name. But he's, you remember
it's okay.
that song?
We're Americans. We'll just be like, yeah, that was right. That was right.
You remember that song? 7 seconds away, just as long as I stay, I'll be waiting. No, okay, doesn't matter.
Just keep going, man.
Do that again.
If I get a free concert, am I going to stop you? I don't. Keep going.
Anyway, but Baba's this great guy, and all the other musicians in Senegal end up going into politics, and he's just like committed to music, and he's just I mean that, and that they end up kind of getting corrupted or whatever. But anyway, he's a total inspiration and continues to make beautiful music. And I say that because the record we made with him is probably the proudest thing. But I would say I was proud really of everything we did, and I remain proud. I'm glad that those records remain and a testimony to the time, certainly my contribution to that band whilst I was there.
Well, I mean, one of the reasons that drew me to Mumford and Sons was, I mean, the lyrics were thoughtful and not kitschy. They weren't like the modern, a lot of modern lyrics. They're just, soulless and just, I mean, you could type into Chat GTP and that's what you'd get. Kind of thing. And you guys weren't doing that. And then of course, just the complexity of all the instruments that you guys were putting together is a really new creative sound. Kind of based off of, old classic rock, based off of a number of folk, folk rock and stuff like that. So that's what drew me to you guys in the first place.
Part of the reason that I was asking about how long you were in the band was because, when you were in a band, I did music. I wasn't at your level, but I know what it's like to be in a band, a long-term band, a close band. And for something like this, you protect your people, right? Like, so when this all came in on you and you're getting pressure from your band, as an artist, I kind of want what Dave Chappelle has done, which is like, I'm coming here to protect comedians, period. You don't get to cancel us. Yeah. And I'm waiting. Well, why didn't the band say, listen, we might not agree with our guy here, but what you aren't going to do is crucify him. We aren't going to put him up to the altar for you so that we can get the high price. Where was that kind of relationship where it's like, okay, so we disagree with you. This is a free world. Let the man read what he wants to read. Where was that kind of mentality, especially after spending 14 years together?
Well, that is a very good question, and I think a question better asked to the other guys in the band. But I will say that, inevitably I did trip this crosswire and on this hot button issue. And with hindsight, it's easy now. I can see that there are a bunch of issues that this kind of stuff does kick off on. And so perhaps I was a bit naive into doing the tweet in the first place.
But then a lynch mob came for you. Let's say that you were naive. I'll give you all those, although I disagree.
Let's say you were an idiot and you were naive.
but one thing, and this is me thinking about, I want to be with the kind of people that we might have disagreements with stuff, but one thing they're not going to allow is a lynch mob to come after me, right? When the lynch mob came...
Are you speaking like a black man now?
That's exactly what I'm thinking about. When the lynch mob came, it's like, no, you don't get to have him. right? And it seemed, and what I saw watching this, a lot of people who probably weren't necessarily, they probably enjoyed your music, but they listened to it here or there, were closer to fighting for you than it seems like a lot of people who were closer to you. And I just, what's happened to artists where
they used to be the fighters.
They used to be the prophets and who would come in and say, here's the truth. This is the freedom we're fighting for. Let the man do his thing and back off. And if we don't have that in our artists anymore, then we don't have anybody who has clear vision anymore.
If artists can't be free,
then who's free?
If comedians can't be free, then who's free?
I think that I agree with you both, absolutely. And I would say that there's a real problem right now in the creative industries. And there's a couple of examples that come to mind. A year ago, if you remember, on the issue of vaccines, Neil Young came out and said to Spotify, if you don't take Joe Rogan's podcast down, take down mine. Now, this is specifically interesting and really shows the climate of the music industry, I think, is because freedom of association, of course, I support that. If Neil Young had just come out and said, take down my music, I don't want to be associated with something that's associated with Rogan, fair enough. But he didn't say that. He said this, take down Joe Rogan, i.e. silence him.
Yeah.
And that's a really crucial difference.
That's fair.
There's another example that just happened, and I've written about this on my Substack. It was in January in England. There's a British Sri Lankan artist called MIA. She's actually of the British Empire. Yeah. And she's been very outspoken against the vaccines.
Yep.
And she was made an offer by a big London festival called Field Day Festival. And then they rescinded their offer, being vague about it, but saying because of her politics. Now, again, she has not said anything that whatever you think about vaccines, whether you support vaccines or not support vaccines, it's an emotional topic. How can we not show empathy, whatever your position is on that, and be like, okay, we disagree, but I'd like, this is the whole, the human species have been under tremendous anxiety and stress for the last 3 years. How can we not have empathy for a fellow man or in this case, woman? But, so what they did is they rescinded their offer for her to play, saying that her politics would be bad for their stakeholders. By the way, there's another story, because stakeholders, specific language that derives from Klaus Schwab and the World Economic Forum. It's stakeholder capitalism is a thing that he's been pioneering for the last 5 decades. But anyway, that's another topic. But they rescinded their offer for her to play, saying that your politics are bad for our stakeholders, i.e. ticket goers. Well, who are they to say what's bad for their ticket goers? Yeah. And if does that mean that the only book artists with the correct politics, who decides what the correct politics are? Does that mean the only book artists who think exactly as they do? And by the way, to quote your former president Benjamin Franklin, if we all think the same, then no one is thinking. So what their Field Day are sort of implying that either going to end up booking artists who don't think, or artists will learn, actually better keep quiet because we won't get booked. And by the way, it is very difficult to make money as an artist. Oh, yeah. It is very, very difficult to make money as a musician. And it's also most people's dream, because it's for so many people, music is their passion. So when they see that, they're going to be like, you know what? Better I just keep my mouth shut, play the gigs. Festivals are a big payday. They're a great way to make a new audience. And I don't want to rock the boat. And I know this because I have private messages, often from really big artists who, who like sympathize. In my case, they'd be like, I actually read that book. What's the fuss about? Like, and honestly, so artists now, they learn to shut up. Yeah. And in an industry where the sine qua non is self-expression, right? The fact that self-expression itself is now not happening, people are scared.
Right.
What exactly does that mean for the future of the creative industries?
Winston, the problem with Winston is he's starting to think.
But here's the deal, though, Winston. This is the type of environment that real artists would die for, though. Like, they want this smoke.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
You know
Winston.
what? That's a very interesting point. And Ernest Hemingway said about Dostoevsky that Dostoevsky, as a writer, was forged in Siberia. As a writer is forged in injustice, as the sword is forged in the fire.
Wow.
And actually, that's really important, worth knowing, because I think for all of this stuff, and obviously, you know, what's happened to me, it doesn't compare to going to Siberia. Obviously, I've not been sent to the gulag. I'm not
yet.
Yeah.
Anyway, saying I have. But nevertheless, in my own small way, there's been a slight sense of injustice. Although, as I said, I'm a big boy. I make the most of it. But I do think that this will make greater artists. This experience and this folly of the last 3 years, partly due to social media, partly due to the pandemic, I think, turned us all a bit bonkers, partly due to a variety of politics that has just blown us all apart as in your country and in my country.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a weird time. It's not unusual to the human experience. There are examples of this in history. This is not unique. There's examples, by the way, of quote unquote cancel culture that go very far back in history.
Right.
De Tocqueville describes what I would say is cancel culture in Democracy in America.
Mm-hmm.
In that book, he describes how some political ideas are absolutely fine at the dinner table, and then there's a change, and then those ideas and people who possess those ideas need to be expunged like a cancer, or cut out like a cancer. Of course, there's Galileo, E Persi Muove.
Yeah.
There's Socrates himself. Cancel culture, whatever you want to call it, this is a very, very age-old thing, and it's normal for humans to behave like this. It's not good, but it's normal. But what it portends for the music industry at the moment, it's bad. But I hope for the creative industries, once we come out of this funk, out of this bizarre period,
Mm-hmm.
hopefully there'll be greater art for it. In fact, actually, I just saw in the cinema Tar with Kate Blanchett, and it's absolutely superb. And it deals with a lot of these issues in a very sophisticated but really human way. I really urge you and your listeners to go and watch this film, because it's the first time where art, I think, is really examining this philosophically and expressing the nuances. And it is the duty of art to express the nuances, because nuance is a nuisance to social media and Twitter and all of that stuff. So I'm starting to see now, actually, maybe the industry is coming out of this bizarre period. You know,
Winston, as I look at the state of art, the state of politics, the state of culture, we're, as we mentioned before we got on air here, that we're just a straight up Christian show. Like, Jesus is Lord over politics. We don't apologize for wanting to apply what we call the lordship over politics. We believe that, Donald Trump should bow his knee to Jesus, and we believe your prime minister should bow his knee to Jesus, and we believe Vladimir Putin should. We believe everybody should. We believe Jesus is Lord over heaven and earth. But I think one of the reasons why we've gotten into the state and condition that we're in is because the church has become so impotent and so scared of being a leader in culture. I believe if the church never would have shut down, at least here in America, in 2020, we never would have had a pandemic. Never.
I'll challenge that a little bit, because I think that you're right in identifying that there's a sort of malaise, or there's the problem is that there's a godlessness that's being taken over, and there's other ideas and ideologies are trying to fill that massive vacuum. And for example, in Britain, the latest census that came out last year, we're now a minority Christian country.
Yeah,
and
incredible.
But there's another thing I would say I haven't fully fleshed out this idea, so I'm sort of thinking it out a little bit. But you guys might have some insight, being Americans.
I'm your Huckleberry.
Is that I think that the history of the Protestant Church specifically has been one that adapts it adapts, and so there's many sects to it, and it's able to find new communities, and it has been able to grow by doing that, as opposed to, say, the Catholic and certainly the Orthodox is completely on the other end, where the Orthodox it's almost hasn't changed in 2,000 years. So I felt this way. I was in San Francisco in November, walking around, and all the churches had rainbow flags and BLM flags and various progressive causes. Almost sometimes it felt like I didn't even see a crucifix. I just saw these symbols.
Right.
And for me, it was like they were, because they're still Christian, or would say they're Christian.
Yeah.
But it was like they were trying to take on these new faddy political movements, which some people are religious about, and they're taking that on, and so trying to kind of make, I don't know if there's an American tradition there of trying to keep relevant by bringing in these new ideas. What's your thought on that? Is that something that, do you think is real, or do you think I'm misguided?
Well, good thing we got a pastor on the show.
Yeah. Well, do you want to take the first hit? I got an idea, a historical connection to that. But,
Well, go ahead.
The historical thing here is wherever the Protestant gospel had gone historically, it turned nations into first world countries. You can basically lay out a map and see that wherever the Orthodox and Catholic gospel went, it would turn nations into second world countries. And so you, at one time, you had the Protestant gospel, which is we'd like to call it maybe some sort of whiskey, Scotch concentrate gospel. It would have a massive impact on the nation, so much that it would be it would turn into an economic dynamite in the world,
and artistic and
creativity,
Yeah.
Poetry, everything would come out of that.
Look at the Renaissance right after the Reformation.
That's right. The Reformation happened in the 1600s, and you have this explosion of art and so forth from that. And then what happened in America? So there's this Puritan pastor, Cotton Mathers, or post-Puritan pastor. I don't know. Puritan pastor. He's Puritan. He said that faithfulness begot prosperity, and the daughter devoured the mother. And so that's what you're seeing here, I think, in America, where the church was faithful here in America. America started off as a Christian nation. They were faithful. God blessed our country, and then that prosperity devoured the church and the faithfulness of the church. And then that's why you're seeing a crap show really here in America, and it's all connected. You could basically connect every sin that's happening publicly in the LGBT culture and in the adultery, rampant in our culture, fatherlessness in our culture. I think you can trace that back to the church here in America.
I was just going to add to that really quickly, is I think related, and to your point, Winston, just in terms of the desire to fit in, and I think this whole dynamic is actually described in Deuteronomy, where God brings his people into the promised land and then says, now look, I'm giving you cities you didn't build, vineyards you didn't plant, wells you didn't dig. And here's what you're going to be tempted to do. You're going to be tempted to say, sitting there all fat and sassy,
I built it.
Look what my hands got me. Look how great we are. When he said the point should be, this is all a gift. I'm giving you this as a gift so that you'll remember me and you'll teach your children to remember me and keep my commands. But I think that's tying into what Gabe was just saying, is I think that's what happens is faithfulness begets prosperity. Faithfulness to God and his word begets families that love one another, generations of families. I think people who tell the truth and work hard and are honest, it's better for business. It actually works. And I think what happens though is then people, they are blessed by that, and the temptation is to think, look what I got. And then when you think it's you, when you think you're the one who did it, then you begin depending on people, on man,
And not God.
and pleasing man.
That's right.
Rather than pleasing God, no matter what. And I think that's the massive difference that's happened is we become, and then you become fearful and you're desperate for attention. You're desperate for, making sure you're keeping up with the fads.
You don't want to be canceled.
Right, because you care about what everybody thinks
And not what God thinks.
rather than fundamentally, what does God think? And I don't know if that makes sense to you, but that's how I would sketch it.
I'd like to just color that in a little bit further on. I like the idea. I like the train of thought, and with regards to prosperity, we are at a period of prosperity, certainly in the West,
Right.
That we've never had before. And I think actually, perhaps part of the disappearance, the slow disappearance of God, is because, and certainly in my life, I've been closest to God in my points of most suffering, and all of us will suffer inevitably. But whereas death was all around in those periods, 2,000 years ago, and now people can go quite a long time without really knowing suffering. And part of me wonders whether I came to Christ actually through suffering, through a divorce. That was my experience, and that was the first time I knew I really felt like I understood pain, and that's part of it. I think it's that the prosperity has pushed us away from God in a the material abundance that we have has blinded us a little bit, and it's the blessing and the curse, because obviously we want prosperity for ourselves and for our neighbors. But at the same time, we've forgotten about Him.
Right.
I just want to color this a little more, because when you are faithful to God, you can't escape prosperity. Right. So
God blesses.
Right. God,
we aren't scared of blessing in that sense.
And when God blesses, you say thank you, and you remember that it's not like you said, it's not your own self that got you here.
Right.
And so, but right now, when we look at our culture and society, we can't look at that and think massive homelessness, 40% of unwed women having babies as a form of prosperity, right? Like that's not
right.
So we're actually in the slumps. We have
the shell.
Absolutely.
We have a shell of prosperity, but I do think it's quickly crumbling.
I mean, we should see it and say, this ain't good. Matter of fact, the State of the Union is trying to get more money, right, that we just had to give to social programs to take care of people because they can't take care of themselves.
That's right.
And so, in one sense, I'm sorry, what did you say?
No, I was just going to say, I mean, prosperity is all about where is it from and what is it for?
Yeah, I just don't want to
Is it from God and what is it for?
Yeah.
It's for God, it's for God, it's for my family, it's for others, it's not for me.
I think there's a you need something to collapse before you're humbled a lot of times. But I don't want to lose the fact that you can't escape the reality that God blesses those who are faithful to Him. Yeah. Right. And actually, being faithful in itself is its own blessing.
Yeah. right.
Yeah. And so, but the thing you don't want to do is 1 Corinthians 10. He's like, you need to remember your forefathers who complained.
In the
wilderness, and then God took them out. Don't complain. Just to give you a little, me and my family, God has been kind to us, and when God's kind to you, like horses in a stable, you get poo, you get a mess, right? But the Proverbs talks about where there is no horse in the stable, it's clean. Yeah. Well, that's a problem.
Right. Yeah.
The mess is there. God gives it to you, and you say thank you for it, because that means something is going on that's good, right? And I think that there's a lot of blessing that we still have. There's a lot of faithful people. And I think we need to look at our own situations and say, all right, Lord, thank you for being kind to us. How do we remain faithful to you? And then the sin that's out there, how do we repent of that? And then, because I think there's a tendency right now to say, let's revolt against blessing because it gets us into trouble.
Right.
Right. I think there's a tendency to say, let's not do that, because if we grow and we get big, we get into trouble. But then that's being retarded. That's not normal. It's not normal not to grow, right? And so there's this balance. It's like it's not one or the other. It's both in.
It's like saying I don't want a car because I might crash it,
right?
Or,
exactly.
I don't want to grow up because then I have to pay bills. I mean, there's like hard things come with good things.
Yeah, mature.
Yeah.
Be faithful. Be faithful to God in those things.
Well, I'd say, Winston, one of the things that I appreciated you from a distance was that I knew, in some sense, you took a big loss.
Yeah.
To end up living out the truth of not caving to cancel culture.
Yeah.
I appreciated you retracted the apology. I thought that was the right thing to do. And you knew that was going to come with, you had to leave the band. You knew that was going to put you in a situation where you had to leave the band. So, I mean, just from an artist doing what's right, sometimes you do lose a lot, and I think you did. But on the other side of that, this is why it's so beautiful to be a Christian, because this is the life of a Christian. It's death. You die to yourself, and yet Jesus resurrects you into a new life. You think you're losing life, you're actually gaining what it really means to live for Christ. And this is why it's so hard, I think, to convince artists who are not Christians, or leaders who are not Christians, or anybody who's not a Christian, to say, hey, you need to do what's right, because that's a form of death. And Jesus is going to raise it up on the other side of that when the sun rises again. Whatever that trial looks like in your life, God has something better for you in your life. I'm talking to my kids about this. We're reading through the book of Joseph right now.
Yeah.
And
we call it the book of Genesis.
The book of Genesis. We're reading through Joseph right now. And that's the beauty about Joseph, was like his brother sold him into slavery.
Right.
And Joseph was not bitter about it.
Wow.
And multiple times at the end of the book of Genesis, he says multiple times, not just once. We missed the first time. He says, God meant that for good. God sent me before you to save you. And that's just glorious. But you can't process that as a Christian. We had this guy on last comment here. We had this guy on yesterday. He said something really helpful to me. He said, your eyes will not see what your mind cannot comprehend, is not ready to comprehend. Your eyes will not see what your mind is not ready to comprehend. And you can't comprehend this death and resurrection narrative in your life if you can't see Jesus first. If you can't see Jesus working in your loss, working in your cancel culture moment, whatever it is, you're in a beautiful position to trust in the Lord, knowing that God is going to work good out of this whole situation. So, I appreciated that.
Musk, I want to give you the last word here too. I just want to say with Gabe, watch you taking the lumps for your band. It sounds like, and I could be wrong, but I thought I heard you say that you're the one decided to quit the band. I just thought that you took the lump. And so that they can continue to go on. And that was very Christ-like, because you took the death. Like, that's a death blow, right? Yeah. Changes everything in your life. And I just thought that was a very bold move to do, and to protect them, even though that wasn't the same situation happening for you. So anyway, last word to you, sir.
Well, you've been, all of you, very flattering. I'd say I find it a little bit embarrassed to be compared to Christ, obviously our Lord and Savior, and it's what I've gone through. It's not compared to it, but in fact, he died the ultimate death, and suffered the most unjust of all deaths. I mean, he literally did nothing, so that we might be saved. And I'll say a couple of other short things. Firstly, important to note, I'm in a fortunate position. The band made money, and I'm not going to pretend like it's all, I gave up what I loved, but I'm okay, and I'm a big boy. Like, I'll be fine. I'm working hard now on different businesses and projects, and it's fine. But I did think, well, if I'm in this position and I can afford to do this, how are people who don't have money, who have got responsibilities like mortgages and families, who are self-censoring on various different topics? Like, if I'm not going to do it, then there's no chance anyone else can be expected to do it. And so actually I feel quite a lot of sympathy for people who don't speak up, because actually life is very complicated, and we mustn't judge those people, because actually family, it's pretty worthy and a thing to sacrifice for, I would say, if not the thing. And I'll finish, and unfortunately Kanye West's last few months have made it difficult for me to quote him without a caveat. But he said something. I love his music, and was a great admirer of some of the things he says until this recent stuff, which we all know. But he said something a couple of years ago. He said, "Fear God, and you shall fear nothing else."
Yep.
And that's not to say that God is to be feared. Like, God is love,
right?
But I think what it means is revere God, because if you revere God, there is nothing here on earth that you need fear.
Right.
And for me, that has really helped me through the last couple of years.
Well, that's a good word.
I didn't know this interview was going to go that way.
Hey, appreciate you, brother. Thank you for coming on the show.
Thank you, gentlemen, Gabriel, Toby, and Chuck. Thank you for having me on your show. God bless you all.
Yeah,
Bless you too.
God bless you.
If
Keep
you're
up the good
single,
work.
get married. If you're married, have you some kids. And if you have kids, go baptize them. Until tomorrow, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday.
One of them days.
Until we see you
Yeah.
again. Love God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength. Love your neighbor as yourself. Go fight, laugh, and feast. This is CrossPolitic.
While God created the world, the morning stars sang together. After God delivered Israel through the Red Sea, Moses and Miriam led the people in singing. God destroyed Israel's enemies under King Jehoshaphat, while the choir sang. When Jesus was born, the angels sang, and before going to the cross, he sang. God rejoices over us with singing, and one of the only things we know for certain that everyone will be doing in heaven is singing. At New St. Andrews College, we understand that music is not an elective. It is central to our being and identity. We endeavor to train all our students in a joyful and robust musical literacy that will help them shape culture in a Christ-like direction wherever they go. Additionally, we offer the Certificate of Music in conjunction with our bachelor's degree in liberal arts and culture for students who desire extra music training beyond the regular music courses they will take as a part of the core curriculum. In the certificate program, you won't simply appreciate music or listen to it or talk about it. You will do music. You will study it, analyze it, read it, write it, sing it, and play it. You will receive private instruction in your primary instrument, as well as secondary lessons in voice, piano, conducting, and other instruments. You will receive a solid foundation in music theory and analysis. You will study music history, church music, and music pedagogy. And when you graduate, you will leave with the ability to sing, play, understand, and steward music in whatever church or community you plant yourself. I'm Dr. David Erb, and this is the Certificate of Music at New St. Andrews College.